To conduct a document review utilizing the Food Legislation Program under the SQF Module 2.4.1, first check if the document title matches the uploaded file name on the dashboard. In this instance, we do have the same titles as the Food Legislation Program. Next, both must have the same document code. For this example, we do have 2.4.1. And since this is a template, we indicate the PCQI as the account initials. However, we can customize the code based on the company's initials. For the page number, we use the page X of Y format. Ensure that it reflects the current page position and the total page number of the document. Then insert the company logo here, together with the company name, the company address, and enter the designated department. For the originated by section, it can be the food safety, quality assurance, or the quality control personnel of the company. The originator ensures the implementation of the quality management and document control system. First, enter the name of the originator, affix the signature, input the position title, and the date originated. For the reviewed by section, it can be the personnel assigned in the Quality Management Department who reviews the drafted document or its revision for accuracy and implementation. First, enter the name of the reviewer, affix the signature, input the position title, and the date reviewed. For the approved by section, it must be the person in the C-level management who has approval authority. First, enter the name of the approver, affix the signature, input the position title, and the date approved. The revision date is the same as the date originated or drafted by the author. For the effective date, it is the date the document was signed and approved. The publication date is when the document is published for distribution and initiated personnel training. The implementation date is when the document is distributed and personnel training is completed. For the supersedes, put original for the initial issuance of the document. For any revisions, reflect the initial revision date before the current revision. Please be reminded that this section must be properly filled out to be compliant. Now we will focus on the components of the program. First is purpose. The purpose is the implementation of any certification standard or compliance with a regulatory requirement. For this program, it is for implementation with the SQF Module 2 Edition 9 for food manufacturing under Clause 2.4.1. First, to implement SQF 2.4.1.1, the site shall ensure that at the time of delivery to customers, finished products shall comply with food safety legislation applicable in the country of manufacture and sale. This includes compliance with legislative requirements applicable to maximum residue limits, food safety, packaging, product description, net weights, nutritional, allergen, and additive labeling, labeling of identity preserved foods, any other criteria listed under food legislation, and to relevant established industry codes of practice. Second, to implement SQF 2.4.1.2, the methods and responsibility for ensuring the site are kept informed of changes to relevant legislation, scientific and technical developments, emerging food safety issues, and relevant industry codes of practice shall be documented and implemented. Third, to implement SQF 2.4.1.3, SQFI and the certification body shall be notified in writing within 24 hours as a result of a regulatory warning or event. Notification to SQFI shall be by email to foodsafetycrisis@sqfi.com. Fourth, to comply with 21 CFR 1.225a, you must register your facility under this subpart if you are the owner, operator, or agent in charge of either a domestic or foreign facility as defined in this subpart, and your facility is engaged in the manufacturing or processing, packing, or holding of food for consumption in the United States, unless your facility qualifies for one of the exemptions in 1.226. B. If you are an owner, operator, or agent in charge of a domestic facility, you must register your facility whether or not the food from the facility enters interstate commerce. And C. If you are the owner, operator, or agent in charge of a facility, you may authorize an individual to register your facility on your behalf. Fifth, to comply with 21 CFR 101.9 Nutrition Labeling of Food. Nutrition information relating to food shall be provided for all products intended for human consumption and offered for sale, unless an exemption is provided for the product in paragraph J of this section. Sixth, to comply with 21 CFR 121.126 Food Defense Plan. A. Requirement for Food Defense Plan. You must prepare or have prepared and implement a written food defense plan. B. Contents of a food defense plan. And C. Records. The food defense plan required by this section is a record that is subject to the requirements of Subpart D of this part. Seventh, to comply with 21 CFR 117.10 Personnel. A. Disease control. Any person who, by medical examination or supervisory observation, is shown to have or appears to have an illness, open lesion including boils, sores, or infected wounds, or any other abnormal source of microbial contamination by which there is a reasonable possibility of food contact surfaces, or food packaging materials becoming contaminated, must be excluded from any operations which may be expected to result in such contamination until the condition is corrected, unless conditions such as open lesions, boils, and infected wounds are adequately covered. Personnel must be instructed to report such health conditions to their supervisors. B. Cleanliness. All persons working in direct contact with food contact surfaces, and food packaging materials must conform to hygienic practices while on duty to the extent necessary to protect against allergen cross-contact and against contamination of food. Eighth, to comply with 21 CFR 117.20 Plant and Grounds. A. Grounds. The grounds about a food plant under the operator's control must be kept in a condition that will protect against the contamination of food. Ninth, to comply with 21 CFR 117.35 Sanitary Operations. A. General maintenance. Buildings, fixtures, and other physical facilities of the plant must be maintained in a clean and sanitary condition and must be kept in repair adequate to prevent food from becoming adulterated. Cleaning and sanitizing of utensils and equipment must be conducted in a manner that protects against allergen cross-contact and against contamination of food contact surfaces, or food packaging materials. B. Substances used in cleaning and sanitizing. Storage of toxic materials. 1. Cleaning compounds and sanitizing agents used in cleaning and sanitizing procedures must be free from undesirable microorganisms and must be safe and adequate under the conditions of use. Compliance with this requirement must be verified by any effective means, including purchasing these substances under a letter of guarantee or certification or examining these substances for contamination. 10th, to comply with 21 CFR 117.40 Equipment and Utensils. All plant equipment and utensils used in manufacturing, processing, packing, or holding food must be so designed and of such material and workmanship as to be adequately cleanable and must be adequately maintained to protect against allergen cross-contact and contamination. And 11th, to comply with 21 CFR 117.80 Process and Controls. A. General. 1. All operations in the manufacturing, processing, packing, and holding of food, including operations directed to receiving, inspecting, transporting, and segregating, must be conducted in accordance with adequate sanitation principles. Next policy is scope. The scope of the program is based on the purpose and serves as a guide in defining and describing the layout of the procedure. It includes compliance with legislative requirements, changes in relevant standards, issues, and practices, development of finished product, raw material, and packaging material specifications, and SQFI and certification body notification. Next is policy. The policies are the rules set by the company as their implementation guide. Under policy, 1. The company has an established good manufacturing practices system to comply with the relevant regulatory and statutory requirements. 2. The company has the resources needed to have conditions that will protect food against physical, chemical, and microbial contamination and deterioration of the food and the container. Third, the company has an established program for information dissemination and updating documents based on changes in relevant standards and emerging issues. And fourth, the company has the means to communicate and notify SQFI in case of regulatory warnings and violations. The fourth component of the program is procedures. The procedure is the step-by-step process and the actual implementation of the policy. Under procedure, first is compliance with legislative requirements, and under that is food facility registration. A food facility submits an initial registration to the FDA only once. However, Section 415 of the FD&C Act, as amended by Section 102 of the Food Safety Modernization Act or FSMA, requires the facility to renew its registration with FDA every other year during the period beginning on October 1st and ending on December 31st of each even-numbered year. Next is food imports. Ensure that food imported into the United States meets the same laws and regulations as food produced in the United States. Products are safe and contain no prohibited ingredients. All labeling and packaging are informative and truthful, and labeling information is in English. Next is prior notice. Provide prior notice for all food for humans and animals that is imported or offered for import into the United States. Prior notice can be provided in one of the two ways. 1. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection or CBP, formerly the U.S. Customs Service, modified the automated broker interface of the automated commercial environment to allow prior notice to be submitted to the FDA through the existing law interface between CBP and FDA. And 2. The Prior Notice System Interface or PNSI is available to individuals or companies who cannot or choose not to file through CBP. PNSI submissions are expected to include a prior notice for shipments through international mail. Inbound entries or admissions into FTZ by carriers or others who do not need to make a full CBP entry at the time of filing the prior notice. Filers or brokers who need to file CBP entries at a time the ACE or OASIS interface is not available, and others who simply prefer to use an interactive system. Next is record keeping. Records are established, maintained, and made available to FDA upon request to allow the agency to identify all food products handled by the facility. We also have good manufacturing practice requirements. All products are produced under safe and sanitary conditions based on the 21 CFR Section 117 Current Good Manufacturing Practices, Hazard Analysis, and Risk-Based Preventive Controls for Human Regulations. Under that, establish and implement a food safety system that includes an analysis of hazards and implementation of risk-based preventive controls. Establish and implement a risk-based supply chain program for those raw materials and other ingredients for which a hazard has been controlled before receipt. And meet updated current good manufacturing practices requirements. After that is labeling. Develop labels that meet legal food labeling requirements. All labeling of FDA-regulated food products must be truthful and not misleading. And ensure proper labeling, including nutrition labeling and labeling for the major food allergen. Next is reporting. Report to FDA when there is a reasonable probability that the use of or exposure to an article of food will cause serious adverse health consequences or death to humans or animals. Next is the hazard analysis and risk-based preventive controls. Develop and implement hazard analysis and critical control point plans, or the food safety plan. Lastly, food defense. Implement measures, strategies, procedures, and policies to prevent intentional and economically motivated adulteration of foods throughout the supply chain. Second, under procedure is the changes in relevant standards, issues, and practices. 1. Identify a key person in charge of maintaining and updating files related to applicable legislation, scientific, technical, and emerging food safety. And the key person and the management are kept up to date on the relevant legislation, food safety issues, and legislative and technical developments by following these procedures. Participate in seminars, conferences, or web training to get information on how the new regulation must be implemented. Membership, subscription, or communication with US FDA, USDA, Codex, CFR, SQFI, trade magazines, food safety magazines, food processing magazines, journal publications, newspapers, etc. Enroll in newsletters with updates from the legislator. Inform all concerned departments of the new legal requirements. Keep a database with all the regulations concerning the company, raw materials, packaging materials, and finished products, and document the changes and keep records. Lastly, under procedure, SQFI and the certification body notification in the event of regulatory warning or food safety incident. In case of a regulatory warning, the food safety team or designee notifies SQFI and the certification body via email within 24 hours upon receipt of the warning. 1. The food safety team or designee prepares and accomplishes the SQFI and certification body notification form and submits it to the senior management for approval. 2. Once approved, the senior management sends the written notification to the following: SQFI by email to foodsafetycrisis@sqfi.com, and enter the certification body name, their email address, and for assistance, enter the contact number. And lastly, ensure adherence to this policy. Next to procedure is responsibility. The responsibility of the person is indicated. It covers what to perform to comply with the procedure or the policy. First is the responsibility of the management and quality control. That is, to ensure that manufacturing practices comply with legislation that applies. Inform and develop employee methods and implement changes to stay current on relevant legislation requirements and emerging food safety issues. Review of documents to maintain and update legislative requirements at least annually or as changes occur. Ensure that changes in documents are cascaded to key personnel. Compliance with legislation is checked as part of the internal audit and the management review. And confirmation that SQFI and the certification body have been notified in writing in the event of a food safety incident requiring a public notification. And the responsibility of the SQF practitioner, quality, or the food safety team is to inform SQFI and the certification body of all regulatory warning notifications received within 24 hours. Next to responsibility is corrective action. The corrective action is the process of taking appropriate steps to eliminate causes of nonconformities or other undesirable situations. In case of noncompliance to the food legislation program, retrain personnel on this policy that is or are involved in the situation. And in case of noncompliance to the applicable regulatory, statutory, and customer requirements, conduct root cause analysis on the problem, derive a corrective action plan that can address the identified root cause, implement the corrective action plan, verify the implementation of the corrective actions and the result of the implementation, and maintain the records of corrective action implementation and verification. The seventh component of the program is review quality. The review section serves as guidelines for conducting the annual or periodic review. Regulatory and statutory standards and customer requirements are available and implemented in the company. Allergen management program and food defense program have been implemented and complied with. A procedure for communicating with statutory and regulatory authorities and customers has been documented and established. Review and revisions on documents have been recorded and maintained. Key personnel is trained and records of training are maintained. And corrective actions have been implemented and their effectiveness have been verified. Eighth is reference documents. The reference documents are the set of documents used to implement and monitor a program, policy, or procedure. It includes the SQFI and Certification Body Notification Form, the finished product specification, followed by raw material specification, allergen management program, the food defense program, food legislation program training, the document control procedure, change history document, and investigation corrective action report. Next to that is references. The reference section is composed of guides utilized to implement the program. Examples are the certification guide, regulations, and other widely accepted scientific journals, research, and the like. It must comply with the standard format citation, which can be based on either MLA, APA, or Chicago style, and update the access date. Lastly, history. The history section is where we can update the program if there are any changes or revisions made in the document. If there is a revision, enter the revision number, followed by the revision date, the description of the change made, the name of the author or the originator, and the title or department of the author or the originator. Thank you for participating in this document review. Content presented are for training purposes only and are based on the interpretation of standards and best practices and must be customized for your intended use. To fully customize your programs, policies, procedures, forms for records, and lessons for training, you may contact Interlink IQ or Consultier Inc. at services@interlinkiq.com or simply call 202-982-3002. For free access, visit interlinkiq.com.